Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Naomi Hausman. I serve as the Director of Institutional Advancement at Gratz College. Thank you so much for joining us for the Arnold and Esther Tuzman Memorial Holocaust Teach-In at Gratz College. This is a very special program and it is my great pleasure to welcome you and to get us started today. Before we begin, a few words about the program. We will be selecting questions from our audience during the last part of the session. If you do have a question, please submit it using the Q&A tool on your Zoom toolbar. Only the moderators will be able to see what you submit using the Q&A. If you're having any technical difficulties today, you can also use the Q&A to ask for help from our IT team. If you pre-registered for one of the two concurrent sessions beginning at 2:45, you should have received an email with the Zoom link, which is different than the link you used for this part of the program. I'd also like to let you know that a recording of this program will be shared with all registrants and available to view for a limited time following today's program. In a moment, our college president will introduce and thank the Tuzman family for whom the teach-in is named. I have the honor of thanking all of the many donors who contributed generously to today's program. So I want to ask our team to put up on the to share the screen so you can see the names of the many donors. And so I'll just give them a moment to get that queued up. While that's coming up, I just want to say that these donor names represent all those who we received contributions up until I think midday on Friday. Any of those that come in after that point or following or following today will be recognized on our website. But please take a moment to join me in recognizing these generous donors. There's too many to name, as you'll see as these slides kind of move through. But I do want to give special thanks to our platinum donors. We have an anonymous donor, as well as Lindy Property Management. I don't know if the slides are still moving through. There we go. Okay. I'd also like to give special recognition to the diamond sponsors, Sam and Gail Goldstein, the Heisman Family Fund, Rochelle Tuzman Sauber, in memory of Douglas James Sauber, and an anonymous donor who you'll see on the slide, wishes only to be recognized as a friend of Marty Tuzman and Eileen Heisman. So thanks to all of these donors, the gold donors, the bronze donors, the silver donors, there's so many. We so much appreciate your generosity. I'd also like to thank all of the many partners. As you'll see right the next slide, we have almost 34, 35 organizations that have partnered with us for today's event. And they generously gave of their time and their mailing list to help us get the word out to so many people. We're just so excited about this program. We wanted to make sure as many people around the world knew about it. So thanks to all of our partner organizations. You'll see there's so many here. There's links to all of their organizations on our website as well. Now, please join me in welcoming the president of Gratz College, Dr. Paul Finkelman.
Thank you very much, Naomi, and especially thank you to the Tuzman family for making this event possible, and also very much a thank you to Art Spiegelman for coming to join us today. This is an important event for Gratz College, and it is an important event for all of you who are here to spend time with one of the truly great artists and thinkers of our lifetime, Art Spiegelman. Normally, this would be done in the building, and we could meet Art Spiegelman, and there would be people from around Philadelphia who are able to come. Of course, because of the pandemic, this is now done online. But the upside is that we have more than 500 participants from all corners of the world. We have attendees from the United States, Canada, Israel, Australia, Italy, and all across the US and Canada, and perhaps some other nations as well. I'd like to give a special welcome to the many Gratz students who are here, our faculty, our alums. I know this is an especially important program for all of us because one of the major components of Gratz College is our Holocaust and Genocide Studies program, and another major component is our education programs, our MED and our EDD program, and all of them are connected to what we're talking about today because this is all about education. I also want to announce, some of you may already know, that we have recently launched something which we call a Center for Holocaust Studies and Human Rights, led by Ruth Sandberg, who is a longtime professor at Gratz. And by combining three programs, our Holocaust and Genocide programs, our Human Rights program, and our Interfaith Leadership program, we are able to give a greater and better integrated education to all of our graduate students at Gratz College. So I want to welcome everybody who's here today and thank you all. The teach-in is named for Arnold and Esther Tuzman, both of whom were Holocaust survivors. It is done every 2 years, a biennial event. For the past 10 years, Gratz, of course, is the oldest independent Jewish college in the United States. Last year, we celebrated our 125th anniversary, and so now we are beginning our second 125 years as a leader of education and as an institution which is dedicated to the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, of repairing the world. And there can be nothing more important in repairing the world than in focusing on the Holocaust and what the Holocaust did and what it means to us today. And in a sense, this is the beginning of a transition because we are now in a world where the number of survivors gets smaller every year, but the second and third generation of Holocaust survivors are still part of retelling the story and reminding the world of the Holocaust. One mantra of the Holocaust has always been never again. And in order to make sure that it is never again, we have to remember that we never forget. And so the Tuzman family, through their generosity, helps us never forget through this teach-in and helps us train teachers and educators at all levels to better understand the Holocaust. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce Marty Tuzman and his daughter, Kira Foley Tuzman, who will provide some remarks on the Tuzman family. Marty, thank you.
Okay, good. I've unmuted. Am I audible? I hope so. Thank you so much, Paul. That was wonderful. And it is such an honor to have people from continents all over. And the presence, the slideshow was terrific, and the music, and so wonderful to have you all join us today. I'm honored to speak on behalf of my sisters and our generation, the children of survivors. I'm also thrilled that my daughter on the screen with us now is speaking for the next gen, the grandchildren of the survivors. Similar to Art Spiegelman's work in Mouse, my comments will be very personal, conveying the tension and challenge in the intergenerational transmission of the stories of the Holocaust. As Art mentioned in a recent chat, the past hangs over the future. And I would add, and indeed, of course, informs the future and creates many opportunities for the transmission of the stories and the legacy. Indeed, my father, those brothers that survived and those that did not, hang over my shoulder. And I'm grateful to present to you today as they inform this responsibility to maintain the legacy. Our program today and the work of Art Spiegelman is deeply resonant for me. I've wrestled my whole life with the stories, the images, and the history of my parents and my people. Images that I was never able to really grasp or afraid to. Of grandparents, aunts and uncles who I never met. Of how they went somewhere and died somehow as nobody bore witness. The path of survival of my folks from the Holocaust was so heavy and constant on my shoulders. In my developing years, the pain of the images was so powerful that I couldn't bear to allow them in my life at times. My young life was much a struggle between respecting my parents and understanding the power of their loss and their experiences, while struggling to get free of that pain and find my own identity and independence. Much of my life as a child of survivors and as a parent of the next gen, I've balanced between looking back and looking forward, the tension of having responsibility for the past and responsibility for the future. We have borne witness, and we will continue to bear witness. And we all carry the responsibility for the transmission of these stories. Remembrance must feed our commitment to recognize and to root out the destructive seeds of ignorance, bigotry, racism, the seeds of genocide, wherever and whenever they may be sown. I'm so grateful to Gratz for the work they do in this program. And I am so grateful for the joy that I have from the next gens in my life. And proud to introduce my daughter, Kira, speaking in her own voice and for the voice of the grandkids and the great-grandkids of the survivors and for those we have lost. Kira.
Thank you, Pop. My grandparents each had very different experiences and shared their stories with us in very different ways. They lived through nightmares, being selected from the family as the one to survive, with pieces of silver from the family menorah sewn in jackets to buy their way out of trouble when needed, in hiding, disguised as a non-Jew, in the partisan resistance movement, in Russian labor camps, and the later rebuilt Polish army. Unimaginable stories we heard, and I'm sure that the worst of them were never shared. My grandmother spent most of the war believing she was the only Jew to have survived, and contemplated suicide for many of those years. It was the blessing of her life to raise her family and see the generations thrive. My grandfather was a warrior, a fighter, and he inspired that strength and determination in my father and my aunts, and we, the grandchildren, have all inherited that legacy as well. As they carried the pain of their loss heavily, we often reminded them that they survived and Hitler did not, and that they had the great joy and opportunity to build great lives and a new family, and to witness the thriving of their people. Their legacy, their strength, and the determination of their survival lives in our DNA, as we carry the responsibility to remember those who we lost and those who survived. I'm so very grateful for all the educators with us today, and all of you in our respective communities who are teaching our future generations, not only to be aware of the horrors of the Holocaust and other genocides, but who are also nurturing our youth in their capacity for compassion and understanding. This awareness is much less likely to spawn attitudes and behavior that demean, scapegoat, attack the other, the stranger, but rather to expand our minds and our hearts so that together we will create and sustain a world rooted not in fear and divisiveness, but in respect and harmony. I am so honored to speak on behalf of my brothers and my cousins of our generation, and in some way to represent all of the Tuzmans from around the world. On behalf of all of us, thank you for being with us today and for helping us to carry on this legacy. And a very heartfelt thank you to the incredible team at Gratz. And Mr. Spiegelman, thank you for joining us. We are so honored to have you today and the powerful message of your work.